You might have seen this document floating around. I found it on a couple Telegram channels that I follow, and these are Telegram channels that are run by evangelicals, and they were essentially saying this is the submission form requesting the right to sacrifice the red heifer. And of course, you guys know I'm automatically just suspicious of any of this sort of stuff, so I figured, okay, how are they translating it? Well, all of the channels that I followed had just taken this photo and thrown it into a photo translator, and photo translators don't translate handwriting. They only really translate like the appropriate script, the keyboard script. So on the right hand side, you've got the keyboard script indicating all of the form pieces to fill out, and then the left, you've got all of the handwriting. Now, I know a little bit of Hebrew, but I do not know handwritten Hebrew, so this was a bit of a heck of a time for me to figure out. Down in section 7 of this form, we see a segment where it's clearly talking about Passover Day, 22nd of April, and they're giving a bit of a timeline for this event to occur. And then below that, let me show you the translation for the very long line of text there. And pardon my lame attempt at trying to translate this, but ultimately that text says, for the people who are filling out the form to list their special reason for conducting this event at the requested time, and they're supposed to fill this in only if they have a special reason. So I figured, okay, if I can figure out what that text says beneath it, then we're gold. I can figure out what their special reason is. So that's what I attempted to do, but I don't understand handwritten Hebrew. So this was a heck of a time. Now, if anyone viewing this knows Hebrew and they can fact check me and tell me whether I'm on the right track, that would be amazing, because this took me a very long time. So the first thing I needed to do was get myself an alphabet that I could compare to. So on the right-hand side is the alphabet in Hebrew that I'm used to looking at with kind of the keyboard characters. On the left-hand side, that's the alphabet that the person who was filling out the form was using. And they weren't even perfectly using this, okay? Because obviously everybody's handwriting is different. So I was like, okay, if I can compare these and try and figure out what letter is what, I can plug it into a translator and figure it out myself. So that's what I did, and I kind of garnered the help of a friend of mine who he knows more Hebrew than I do. We're both studying it. I figured two brains together is better than one. And so this is like the translation into, or not the translation, but kind of the transcription into keyboard Hebrew is what I guess I'll call the script, that we were able to come up with. So the second word is halakha, which means like it's a type of law. Okay. The third word, it means like obligation. The fourth one has to do with like this time or set time. The fifth is kind of like a this, them, some sort of grammatical term. And then the final word means like group or team. So my understanding of this is that this phrase is saying this is the obligatory halakha for this time for our group. That's my very rough translation. So keeping that in mind, what this document then means is that these individuals are requesting a time and space to be able to host, I believe on the document it says about 10,000 people approximately, for the obligation of the halakha for Passover. So what is the halakha for Passover? I mean, it could involve a sacrifice. I'm not really seeing anything in this document that talks about a sacrifice. So I guess we take that with a grain of salt, but it essentially means that they want to gather together to observe Passover probably on the Temple Mount. That's what I can gather from this. And here are just a couple news clippings from the previous years, from 2023, 2022, 2019. Like literally every year there have been people arrested for trying to conduct a Passover sacrifice near the Temple Mount or on the Temple Mount. They've all been detained. And again, these kind of fringe groups who are really keen to do these sacrifices have submitted requests pretty much every single year as far as I'm aware. So this is not necessarily anything new to Israel. So again, this document, it isn't about the red heifer. Let's talk about just briefly about the red heifer for a second. You can read about this instruction in Numbers chapter 19, and one of the first things that you should note right off the bat is this is not a sacrifice. Anybody who's calling it a sacrifice is technically incorrect. This is an ordinance that the Lord commanded to deal with the issue of people who come into contact with the dead and become unclean in that manner. So for people to be made clean, they were supposed to, you needed the ashes from this red heifer that was burned up. It had to be a specific type of heifer, and it was slaughtered outside of the gate. It had nothing to do with the Temple Mount. So that is the ordinance of the red heifer. Again, if you haven't read Numbers chapter 19, I highly recommend that you go take a read through it. That way you'll have the knowledge to know whether somebody is being factual or not when they're talking about this ordinance. Before I let you go, I will give you one more piece of information. This screenshot was taken from the official Instagram account of the Temple Institute. Somebody in the comment section asked them, when is the ceremony scheduled to happen? Speaking of the red heifers, and their response is, there is absolutely no date at this time. The only people that I know who are pushing and saying, hey, this sacrifice, quote unquote sacrifice, is going to happen this Passover are evangelicals who are not in Israel and have no understanding of how the Torah works. So let's just calm ourselves and look at what's happening in Israel. I think the most important thing right now is to pay attention to what's going on the northern border with the tension between Israel and Iran's proxies.